Alright guys, this is the lecture for Module 14. In this lecture we are going to discuss something that everyone loves, inflation. We're going to learn how to calculate the rate of inflation. We're going to look at the different costs that come about as a result of really high inflation in the economy. We're going to identify who is helped and hurt by inflation. Talk about why policymakers try to maintain a stable rate of inflation, differentiate between real and nominal values of income, wages, and interest rates, and discuss the problems of deflation and disinflation. Alright, now, the real wage is the wage rate divided by the price level. Real income is income divided by the price level. So basically what we're doing there is anytime you see the word real, we're taking away the impact of inflation. Alright, now the inflation rate is the percentage increase in the overall level of prices per year. So we're going to take the price level in year 2 minus the price level in year 1 divided by the price level in year 1 times 100, and that gives us the inflation rate. Alright, so you're going to put that formula right there in your notes. Price level versus the inflation rate. As you can see, the price level has increased overall, this way. It's pretty steadily. The inflation rate has been pretty consistent, with several fluctuations here, right around 2%, and that's the target inflation rate. We're going to talk more about that as we get to talking about the Federal Reserve and how they work to keep inflation under control. But as you can see here, there were some periods of time in the late 70s, early 80s during periods of stagflation where inflation was as high as 14%. So kind of crazy, and you can see a sharp increase in the price level when that happened, but for the most part it's been a pretty steady rise. Alright, now these are the 3 costs of inflation that you're going to write down. The first cost is called shoe leather costs, and that's basically where the increased cost of transaction that's caused by inflation. So if you have really high inflation, it behooves you, the consumer, to convert your cash, your money, into other things as quickly as possible. Whether that's buying stocks or bonds or assets that won't get eaten away by inflation. Every time you make one of those purchases, you have to pay a fee of some sort, and so those fees are the shoe leather costs, because you're like running to convert your money into other things. Okay, so it's wearing out the leather on your shoes. The next cost that comes about as a result of high inflation is something that's called menu costs. That's the real cost of changing a listed price. Over here, you'll see that these prices are written in chalk at a menu, or on a regular, takeaway menu. Basically, anytime there's high inflation, if you own a restaurant or anything like that, you want to be able to change your prices pretty easily. Because let's say this was written in permanent, the same kind of printed material, every time you wanted to change your price, you have to print off a whole new menu. So it's definitely easier for stores to be able to quickly change the price on things. Alright, so that's the menu cost. Any cost of changing the price on things. Plus, you have to also think about the time it takes to go into your computer systems and update the price there too. So sometimes just having a simple chalkboard doesn't even cover the total costs. The unit of account costs derives from the way inflation makes money a less reliable unit of measurement. Basically, when that happens, people will start to value things in different ways. It just kind of basically the cost from what happens when money is undermined as a unit of measurement. All right, it kind of throws everything off in an economy. A couple of examples. Well, one main example here: in the mid-1980s, Israel experienced what's called clean inflation, but policy errors led to very high inflation after that clean inflation. So it started off, maybe a little high, but not too bad. But then the central bank in Israel made some errors. The shoe leather costs were substantial. Israelis spent a lot of time moving money in and out of bank accounts that provided high enough interest rates to offset inflation. Business made effort to minimize menu costs. For example, restaurant menus often didn't list prices. It was hard for Israelis to make decisions because prices changed so much and so often. Housing prices in Israel during this time were actually listed in US dollars, and then based on whatever the current exchange rate was, or whatever the current inflation rate was, that impacted the exchange rate, and so that would dictate how much you paid actual Israeli cash for a house. Winners and losers from inflation. So before we get to that, the nominal interest rate is the interest rate expressed in dollar terms. The real interest rate is nominal interest rate minus the rate of inflation. All right. Now, whenever we borrow money, we borrow it in nominal interest rates. There's no way for the bank to calculate real inflation rate going forward. All right. Now, what they do is they make guesses based on where they think inflation is going to be, and then when they loan you the money, they take that into consideration, but they really don't know. All right. So if inflation is higher than expected, borrowers will gain at the expense of lenders. All right, so basically what happens when it's higher than expected, the dollar amount you're paying back is less than, in a real sense, it's less than what it was, than what you should be paying back. If inflation is lower than expected, then lenders will gain at the expense of borrowers because money holds its value better, so you're paying more back over a long period of time. Disinflation is the process of bringing down the inflation rate. That's just, if we have a high inflation rate and then we have to get it down, that process is called disinflation. All right. Now, as you can see, the unemployment rate and the inflation rate are generally negatively related. So if the unemployment rate goes up, like we see here, right, then the inflation rate goes down, like we see there. So to lower the inflation rate, the Federal Reserve is going to have to cause the unemployment rate to go up, which means that we are going to have a recession. So that's the problem with trying to bring inflation down. You end up causing a recession. All right. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for being patient, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day.